Hey guys, my name's Emily and I'm a 3D vehicle artist at Rivet Games. I'm a new voice. I've only been at the studio for a couple of months now, and my first project was working on the Allegra. So to start off, I was not a user of Blender, so I started off doing the furniture for the Allegra, which gave me a good little teaser into how Blender works and just how to do the pipeline that Rivet does. So we started off doing all of our furniture pieces by doing our first class chairs, our standard class chairs, and our table. And then we basically just split that off into what we would call our bake model, so that when we are doing our bakes or our textures, we don't end up with some shader errors on textures, because basically just overlap stuff to make it a bit more memory safe for your game, so you get a better performance. Once I finished doing all of the furniture for the train, I started making a go-ahead with our interior of the train by doing a quick blockout using the references that we were provided with. So for our first class section, I made it a little bit more modular so it was easier to control what I was doing. The interior for the first class, it was a little bit wider because first class gets a lot more space. And then for our standard class, it was just that slightly bit smaller, so it's basically just copy and pasting what we had from first class and just shrinking that down a little bit. After that, we then moved on to detailing our interior. So we're just going into the model, making sure that we've got the scale right by positioning our seats and using reference images to make sure that we've got the walls in the correct position and getting our number plates in the correct places, and also adding in the details for the ski rack, as this is a Switzerland route, and making sure that we've got all of our buttons in place just to give it a little bit more detail. After that, we basically just moved on to making sure that we have materials set up properly, so we can make sure that we've got our decals in the correct place, just optimizing as much texture space as possible so you get a clearer image of all the text that goes onto all of our panels. After doing all of our materials and unwrapping, we then just move on to doing our rigging and animation, so making sure that all of our blinds and doors are rigged properly so that when the tech team takes over the model, they can just put it into engine and make it animate properly. Next, what we do is we make sure that we have done the same thing for our other carriages. So if I just show you here, we did our middle carriage, which was slightly different as it had the toilet area and it had the disabled seating area for our train. So with this, our doors basically came down a little bit lower so that the bottom of our floor met the floor of the platform. Whereas if you've seen with our first carriage, it has some stairs that meet the platform instead. So we basically just make sure that we've got all three carriages looking good, and then we can move on to our texturing. After that, we take our models into Substance Painter and start texturing them. So for our furniture, we made sure to split off the first class standard seat and table onto separate materials to optimize the detail that we got. So like I said before, we explode our meshes so that we don't end up with bake errors, so you'll get the shadows in the correct position. Same with our first class seats as well, just so you've got your shadows in the correct place and we optimize the correct amount of detail. And with our table, we made sure that was on a separate material, as we have the map of the route on the table, and it gives us a little bit more detail so the player can enjoy the little experience that we have for that. And we move on to texturing our interiors. For this, we make sure that we do some tileable materials, as this uses less texture space, which uses less memory and gives better performance in the game so the player can enjoy it a lot better. So for our interiors, we had 3 different floor materials that were tileable and about 3 different wall materials that were tileable as well. Then we have our details map, which basically is anything with alpha, so a see-through material, to give us the detail of like vents and stuff on the bottom for the heaters, and the holes for the design on the ceiling as well. And then we just make sure that all of our decals and stuff are correct, and you get enough detail on that too. Next we put our models into the engine, and then we can basically just check to make sure that our textures are working correctly with our lighting system. So this here is our art test level, something that the players will not see in the game, but it just helps us understand if our materials are set up properly so that they work with our lighting in the engine, and we just make sure that everything loads in correctly so that it looks good in the game. And that's basically how we did our interiors. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more stuff like this, just so that we know that you're happy to watch more content. Thank you for watching.